we're here today. We're just going to ask Alric Lindsay a couple of questions about where he stands on MP accountability. We are in a restaurant, so you might notice a little bit of background noise, but this is the opportunity that we have to engage with our Georgetown South candidate. And I'm very grateful that you've taken the opportunity to answer these questions in person and face-to-face, so that anybody watching this video later on can hear your responses. They will not be edited. Nothing will be cut out in terms of your response. So I just want to say welcome and thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
So the first question is the general elections is on April 14th, 2021. If elected, would you support strengthening the framework laid out in the Constitution for dealing with MPs whose behavior is unbecoming of Parliament? If yes, how would you do this? And if no, why not?
I would definitely want to strengthen that framework, and I hope that my fellow MPs will support me in strengthening the framework. There are several things that I'd like to see. Under our standing orders in relation to some of the highest positions in Parliament, we need to strengthen those positions so that it is much easier for a certain percentage of the members of Parliament to take action in certain circumstances. Recently, we saw that certain choices were made to call early elections, but other options were available. We need to have that expanded to ensure that members of the opposition, for example, could have more ways to bring an action without the overbearing power of the ruling party, which may block a very necessary action in relation to accountability. The other thing that I think needs to be changed is the actual Constitution. That's going to actually take an order in council from the UK, where the UK passes an amendment directly from the UK, or it's going to take an action from the people, perhaps by referendum, to change the Constitution to include measures such as allowing you as a voter to remove an elected official in certain circumstances, and also disallowing that person from being able to run for office for a certain period of time after being disallowed.
Okay, so you've actually kind of gone into one of our other questions as well, but we'll get to that. So you might feel like you're repeating yourself, and that's because you're going down a pathway for MP accountability that really shows that you're not just thinking about one angle. The next question is this: do you believe accountability is a key issue, not just for this election, but also for the country? Why or why not?
Yes, accountability is a key for this election and going forward, and for the entire country. We see many issues recently where accountability has arisen as a great concern. When you are a person in public life, the accountability part of your role is actually set out in the Standards in Public Life Act. One of the issues we have with that definition under the Standards in Public Life Act is that it actually doesn't involve responsibility, and that is very shocking. The Standards in Public Life Act actually says that you have to be accountable for your decisions and you have to subject yourself to public scrutiny. Nowhere does it say responsibility. When you look at other definitions of accountability, you see that the other definitions of accountability outside the Standards in Public Life Act require some level of responsibility for your own actions as well as being subject to public scrutiny. So responsibility is a key here when it comes to accountability. It's you taking responsibility for your actions, which is an element missing from the actual definition of accountability under the Standards in Public Life Act. The other issue with that Standards in Public Life Act is that it was amended from stating a breach of those principles, accountability, for example, shall result in a contempt of Parliament. The word was changed to a breach of the principles may result in a contempt of Parliament. And so we see this ongoing issue of a government which is trying to dodge accountability and transparency. We've seen in other instances where they've changed the law to remove transparency. And in this case, they've changed the law to create a discretion of contempt of Parliament instead of making it mandatory that there is a contempt of Parliament. So it's very interesting to see the sort of approach to accountability. And these are just some of the things that I think needs to be changed in order to ensure greater accountability. The last thing I think we need to look at is the way some of these commissions are appointed to oversee accountability. For example, there's currently a commission for standards in public life. Now, I don't know who all the members are. I'm sure they're very competent and knowledgeable people. However, I think that we just need to ensure that going forward, whoever replaces those competent people are not people that have any conflicts of interest with existing members of Parliament. Because if there are conflicts of interest in the future, we don't want that conflict to prevent members of any oversight body from exercising their functions in a way that would make those members of Parliament actually accountable. We don't want anyone who's a member of any board or any commission that will turn a blind eye the way some of our members of Parliament have turned a blind eye to accountability.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the in-depth kind of insights as to the issues with accountability for sure. The next question. Would you support a constitutional provision that allows electors of a constituency to recall their MP?
Yes, and this conversation came up a few days ago, and one of the things we explored was how would that work? Would it work from the level of just the electoral district responsible for appointing that member of Parliament? Or, since the actions of the member of Parliament affects the whole country, would you then say you would get a percentage of the voters in every electoral district to pass the resolution to remove that member of Parliament? So there are several ways to look at that issue, and it's very interesting to look at it that way, because you could say that the members of the electoral district that elected that person should be the only ones to pass the provision to remove that member of Parliament. The problem there is, what if the person is very popular in that electoral district, and regardless of what that person does, the voters are still going to vote for him? That's an issue. So I think the other approach also has to be explored, and that is allowing a certain percentage of each electoral district to voice their concerns by way of voting to remove the relevant elected official on the basis that their action impacts the entire country, including our reputation.
That's a really interesting thing. I know there's been a lot of discussion about what a recall would look like, and every person that I ask definitely has ideas for discussion. And what I want to do is just, to anybody that's watching this video, put out the caveat that what I'm hearing today doesn't mean that you support a specific mode of action in terms of, but it is to have the discussion about what a recall looks like, to be open to exploring different ideas. And I think that's ultimately how a country will get to a place where they can find, if a recall is what the country wants, that we find a fair, equitable process, so that we respect the will of a constituency on who they elect. At the same time, we also hold respect for what those elected representatives are meant to do. So I just want to be very clear from what I heard from you today. It is not that you have said this is the way that we should do a recall. What I'm hearing from you is these are some of the things that we could explore. Is that right?
Correct. And I've only come to this idea because I've spoken to people in the community, and this is the feedback that they've given, that there are different approaches to achieving the same result. And I think that this is something that should be discussed with the members of every electoral district. And if you get an opportunity, you should ask your candidate what their view is, whether we have a vote by electoral district or whether we have a vote from all of the electoral districts in relation to this very important issue of accountability and removing bad actors.
Absolutely. So with the conversation of bad actors, it leads me to the next question, which is, if given the opportunity, will you form a government with, or which includes, convicted criminals such as William McKeeva Bush?
Well, the answer is no, if it's the ruling government. Obviously, in Cayman, we only refer to government as being the ruling party or ruling members of government. Now, it is possible that I'm sitting on the opposition and there may be a bad actor sitting on the opposition. So while I will not form the ruling government with a bad actor, I may not have a choice when it comes to sitting on an opposition bench with a bad actor if the ruling government decides that I'm not playing a role in the ruling government. So it's actually a very interesting question, and it does have some complex parts, because you may think the real question is whether or not you would work with a bad actor. If the question is whether or not you would work with a bad actor, the choice may not be yours, because if the ruling government doesn't have you as a part of the ruling government and the bad actor is sitting on the bench and you're sitting on the bench, in essence, you're working on the same side of the bench as a bad actor. Now, you don't have to agree with the policy positions or the approach of that bad actor. The other complex part about your question is that criminal actually includes someone who has a DUI, driving under the influence. So you could have someone who had a DUI. You could have someone who also committed a smaller crime. Now, under the law, they would still be deemed a criminal. So there's some very complex parts of your question, and I'm just clarifying that there are different levels that we all have to appreciate. So in the case of certain bad actors that we recently experienced, and those sort of cases, the answer would be definitely no in terms of forming the ruling government with that sort of bad actor. However, as I say, there are very complex parts to it when you're not part of the ruling government and you're sitting on opposition, and also you have to look at the specific type of crime that has been committed, because obviously some things are totally unacceptable and unforgivable, especially in recent cases.
Okay, so is there anything else you want to add, or are we good to go to the next question?
We can go to the next question.
Okay, excellent. So before we pop over to the next question, what I want to point out is that per what Alric has just said, there are different classes of crimes. So you have a candidate right now that's running, and that candidate has multiple ongoing DUI offenses repeatedly going before the courts at least 3 times that I'm aware of. So you have to decide, do you want to form a government with people that are repeatedly driving under the influence and jeopardizing our community? You have other cases where we have sitting members of parliament who have been convicted of offenses that deal with drugs. So it isn't just about one particular quote unquote bad actor or politician. This is about what kind of leadership, what kind of people do we want serving us when we have a majority of people that are law abiding in this country. So when we talk about forming the government, we are talking about the government that gets formed with a Speaker of the House, with different ministries that form the cabinet. So we recognize that there will be backbenchers, there will be opposition. That isn't considered the formal government in terms of the government that most of us are referring to. So I just wanted to get that out there for some clarity as well. We'll jump to the next question, which is, in what circumstances should an MP resign, be suspended, or otherwise be disciplined by Parliament? And that question also has the caveat that there may not necessarily be areas where Parliament can discipline them, but it's just to get an idea of where you stand on that question.
So first of all, whether or not someone has a criminal record, it's up to the voters to decide whether or not they want to vote for that person. So there's no attempt to sort of stifle anyone's freedoms to elect who they want to elect. So if you know what the facts are and you decide to vote for someone, that's your prerogative. Now when it comes to discipline of members of parliament, I think this is going to be covered under, if we get an amended constitution and if we get a proper code of conduct, and if we get proper boards who are appointed or commissions who are appointed that have oversight for these types of functions and who are independent enough and who lack conflicts of interest enough that they can make a decision that is fair and is in the best interest of the people. Examples of items which should require discipline or assault of people in our community, anything that's violent in the community. I think drugs should be a part of one of the reasons for discipline. Anything that results in our country having a bad reputation internationally. Those are some of the things that I think that members of parliament should receive discipline for. However, they should be given an opportunity within whatever code of conduct we have or under whatever commission we have to put forward what their defense is. And obviously, if it was something that was misunderstood, they will have the opportunity to be heard.
Okay. So with that, that was our final question. I'll be putting this up on Cayman Voices later on today, or this week, I should say. So I want to say thank you very much. I know that you spent a lot of time today answering a series of other questions as well. So I know you have a lot of work ahead of you. We wish you all the very best. And if there's any questions that anybody watching this video has, how can they reach you? How can they get in touch with you?
There are a number of ways to get in touch with me. One is Alric, 4, Cayman @gmail.com.
Okay, and what's your phone number? And I know that you always say WhatsApp is the best way to reach you. So what's the number that they can add to their phones and so they can send you a WhatsApp if they have questions?
So send me a WhatsApp. I'll get back to it. If I'm in a meeting and you called and you couldn't reach me, the number is 926-1688, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to physically visit the office, send a quick WhatsApp to say you'd like to have an appointment, and we will arrange an appointment with you anytime between 1 to 4, Monday to Friday. Our office is at Genesis Building on the 5th floor. Send me a WhatsApp, 926-1688, and we can arrange an appointment for you to come in and chat about your concerns or to get information regarding any matter to do with the elections.
All right, well listen, you have a great day. I'm gonna end the video now. You guys have a great day. And again, I want to encourage you, regardless of who your candidates are, please make sure you know which constituency you're registered to vote in. Please make sure you know who all of your candidates are, and please attend the meetings, whether it's in person or if it's virtually via Zoom or whatever media is out there that's televising it. Please ask your MPs or your candidates questions, because this is the one time we know for sure they're listening and they're ready to engage with us. Thanks and have a great day, guys.